The gavel struck wood with a finality that made Arjun Malhotra's chest tighten. $300,000. For a single dinner with a woman whose name he barely remembered from the auction catalog. Going once, going twice. The auctioneer's voice cut through the murmur of Manhattan's elite gathered in the Waldorf Astoria's grand ballroom. Sold to bidder number 47. Arjun's hand remained steady as he lowered his paddle, ignoring the shocked whispers rippling through the crowd. He had exactly 18 months before his 35th birthday. 18 months before the Malhotra curse claimed another generation, unless he found a way to break the cycle that had killed his father, his grandfather, and every firstborn son for the past century. The blonde woman on stage looked like she wanted to disappear. Serafina Hayes, according to the program. A nurse from Brooklyn with a 10-year-old daughter. Her application had mentioned needing money for medical bills, which made her perfect for his purposes. Desperate enough to consider his proposition, wealthy enough afterward to never need anything from him again. He studied her face as she stepped down from the platform, noting the way her jaw clenched when photographers snapped pictures. Most women would be preening at the attention. She looked ready to bolt. Mr. Malhotra. His assistant Cameron appeared at his elbow, tablet in hand. The background check came back clean. Serafina Hayes, 28, works at Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. Single mother. No criminal record. No significant debts beyond the medical expenses for her daughter Luna. What kind of medical expenses? Specialized treatments. The file doesn't specify, but the bills are substantial. Arjun nodded, watching as Serafina disappeared into the crowd. She moved differently than the other charity auction participants, avoiding the socialites trying to congratulate her. Her dress was elegant but off the rack, her jewelry minimal. Everything about her screamed genuine need rather than social climbing. Perfect. Schedule the dinner for tomorrow night. Somewhere private. Already done. Lou Bernardine has prepared their private dining room. Across the ballroom, he caught another glimpse of blonde hair as Serafina headed toward the exit. For a moment, their eyes met through the crowd. Even from this distance, he could see the wariness there, the way she sized him up like a threat rather than a benefactor. Smart woman. His phone buzzed with a text from his cousin Priya. 300,000? Are you insane? He typed back, business investment. What he didn't tell Priya was that he'd been tracking the curse's pattern for months. Every Malhotra firstborn son died before age 35, always in circumstances that appeared accidental but followed the same timeline. His father's car crash at 34. His grandfather's heart attack at 34 and 11 months. The pattern went back generations, always linked to conflicts with the Blackwood family that had started over a century ago. But there had been one exception. One Malhotra who had lived past 35, who had broken the cycle temporarily. Great-uncle Vikram, who had fallen in love with a Blackwood daughter before dying at 19 in what family records called a hunting accident. Arjun had spent 2 years searching for any surviving Blackwoods, anyone who might hold the key to ending this generational blood feud. The family had supposedly died out decades ago, but he'd found traces. Whispers of a daughter who had disappeared, a granddaughter who might still be alive. Sir, Cameron was still waiting. Should I arrange security for tomorrow's dinner? Yes. And run another background check on the daughter. Luna Hayes. Something doesn't add up. He pulled out his phone to review the file Cameron had compiled. Serafina Hayes had appeared in New York's records 11 years ago, as if she'd materialized from thin air. No family history, no previous addresses, no college records despite her nursing degree. For someone who claimed to be ordinary, she had remarkably few traces. The auction catalog photo showed a woman with classical features and intelligent green eyes. But it was the small details that intrigued him. The way she held herself, the quality of her bone structure, the unconscious poise that spoke of careful breeding despite her working-class circumstances. Mr. Malhotra? A woman's voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to find Serafina Hayes standing behind him, still wearing that wary expression. Ms. Hayes, I was hoping we'd have a chance to talk. About tomorrow night. She glanced around the crowded ballroom, then back at him. I need to be clear about something. This is just dinner. Nothing more. Of course. And I want to know why you bid so much. $300,000 could feed a family for years. He appreciated her directness. Let's discuss that tomorrow, when we have more privacy. She studied his face for a long moment, and he had the unsettling feeling she was reading him as carefully as he was reading her. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she nodded once. Lou Bernardine. 7 o'clock. She was gone before he could respond, melting back into the crowd with practiced ease. Arjun found himself smiling for the first time in months. Serafina Hayes was definitely not what she appeared to be. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a number he didn't recognize. The Blackwood bloodline isn't as dead as you think, Malhotra. Stop digging, or join your ancestors. The message vanished from his screen before he could screenshot it. Arjun's smile widened. Someone was worried enough to threaten him, which meant he was on the right track. Tomorrow's dinner had just become much more interesting. Serafina checked the locks on her apartment door for the third time since returning from the auction. Luna was asleep in her bedroom, but Serafina could hear her daughter moving restlessly, muttering numbers in her sleep. Another episode. The $300,000 should have felt like salvation. Instead, it felt like a trap. She pulled out her laptop and typed Arjun Malhotra's name into the search engine. The results painted a picture of extreme wealth and careful privacy. Tech mogul, philanthropist, heir to a family fortune that spanned generations. But there were gaps in his story too, periods where he disappeared from public view entirely. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Ms. Hayes, this is Cameron Wright, Mr. Malhotra's assistant. He'd like to move tomorrow's dinner to his private residence in the Hamptons. A car will collect you at 6. That wasn't the arrangement. Mr. Malhotra insists. He believes you'll find the conversation more productive in a secure environment. Serafina's blood ran cold. Secure from what? The line went dead. She double-checked the deadbolts and moved to Luna's room. Her daughter's eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. Mom, the man with dark eyes is coming. He knows about the symbols. What symbols, sweetheart? Luna sat up, reaching for the sketchpad she always kept beside her bed. Her pencil moved across the paper in quick, precise strokes. When she finished, Serafina's breath caught. The drawing showed an intricate family crest. 2 intertwined serpents surrounding a crown, with Latin text that read, Vis Unita Fortia. Strength through unity. The Blackwood family motto. Where did you see this, Luna? In my dreams. The lady with sad eyes shows it to me. She says the families were supposed to be friends, but something got broken. Serafina's hands shook as she took the sketchpad. Luna had never seen the Blackwood crest before. There was no way she could know about it, unless... Luna, I need you to listen carefully. Tomorrow, you're going to stay with Mrs. Chin downstairs. Don't answer the door for anyone else. Don't talk to strangers. Are we in danger? The question hung in the air between them. Serafina had spent 11 years building a life where Luna would never have to ask that question. Now everything was unraveling. Just being careful, baby. She tucked Luna back into bed and returned to her laptop. If Arjun Malhotra was connected to the Blackwood investigation, she needed to know how much he'd discovered. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing databases she hadn't touched in years. What she found made her stomach drop. Malhotra Industries had been quietly funding genealogy research for the past 2 years. Professional investigators, DNA testing companies, private security firms, all focused on one goal, finding surviving members of the Blackwood family. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We know who you are, Serafina Blackwood. Come home, or face the consequences. She deleted the message and powered down the phone. After 11 years of hiding, they'd found her. The question was whether Arjun Malhotra was trying to help her or destroy her. The next evening, Serafina stood outside her apartment building as a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The driver was professional, polite, and obviously armed. She'd spotted the shoulder holster when he opened her door. The drive to the Hamptons took 90 minutes. Arjun's estate sprawled across 20 acres of waterfront property, surrounded by high walls and sophisticated security. She counted at least 6 guards during the brief trip from the gate to the main house. Arjun met her at the front door, dressed casually in dark jeans and a white button-down shirt. Without the formal suit, he looked younger, less intimidating. But his eyes still held that calculating intelligence that had unsettled her at the auction. Thank you for coming. I know the change of venue was unexpected. Your assistant mentioned security concerns. Among other things, he led her through a house that managed to be both luxurious and comfortable. Original artwork lined the walls, but the furniture looked lived in rather than just decorative. They walked past a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and into a dining room with windows overlooking the ocean. Dinner was already prepared: grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and wine that probably cost more than her monthly rent. They ate in relative silence, each studying the other. "You're not what I expected," Arjun said finally. "What did you expect? Someone more impressed by all this?" He gestured around the elegant room. "Most people are. Most people haven't spent their lives running from money and power." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Arjun's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Running from what, specifically?" Serafina set down her wine glass. "Why don't you tell me why you really bid $300,000 for a dinner with a stranger?" "Because I don't think you're a stranger. I think you're exactly who I've been looking for." The room seemed to shrink around them. Serafina's training kicked in, her mind calculating exit routes and weapons within reach. The butter knife wouldn't be much use against armed guards, but it was better than nothing. "I'm a nurse from Brooklyn with a sick daughter. Nothing more. Your daughter draws family crests she's never seen before. You have no background beyond 11 years ago, and you move like someone with military training." Serafina stood up. "This dinner is over. Sit down, Serafina Blackwood." The name hit her like a physical blow. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then survival instincts took over. "My name is Serafina Hayes. Your name is Serafina Blackwood, daughter of Edmund Blackwood, granddaughter of the woman who stole the original peace treaty between our families. You faked your death 11 years ago after giving birth to a daughter whose father was my cousin Vikram." Every word was another nail in the coffin of the life she'd built. Serafina's hand moved to the butter knife, but Arjun raised his hands, palms out. "I'm not your enemy. I need your help to break a curse that's been killing both our families for generations. The Blackwoods don't make deals with Malhotras. Then both our bloodlines will continue dying until there's no one left to carry on the feud." Serafina studied his face, looking for deception. Instead, she saw desperation barely held in check. "What do you want from me?" "Marriage. A real union between our families. It's the only way to end this." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want me to marry you for your money?" "I want you to marry me to save our children's lives." The weight of those words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Outside, waves crashed against the shore, a rhythm as old as the feud that had torn their families apart. Serafina thought of Luna, drawing symbols in her sleep, carrying the weight of ancestral memories she was too young to understand. "I need time to think." "You have until tomorrow. After that, I can't guarantee your safety. Or Luna's." The threat was delivered quietly, almost gently, but Serafina heard the steel beneath the velvet. She was trapped, and they both knew it. Serafina returned to her apartment at midnight to find her front door slightly ajar. Her blood turned to ice as she noticed the scratches around the lock mechanism. Professional work. She pulled out her phone to call 911, then stopped. If she involved the police, they'd ask questions she couldn't answer. Questions about why someone would want to break into a nurse's apartment in Brooklyn. Moving silently down the hallway, she grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer and checked every room. Nothing was missing, but everything felt violated. Someone had searched through her belongings with practiced efficiency. Luna's room was empty. Panic clawed at Serafina's throat as she ran to Mrs. Chin's apartment downstairs. The elderly woman answered on the first knock, Luna visible behind her in pajamas, clutching her sketchpad. "Thank God," Serafina breathed, pulling her daughter into her arms. "Is everything okay, dear?" Mrs. Chin asked. Luna said she had a bad feeling about going upstairs tonight. "Just a gas leak scare. We'll stay here tonight, if that's all right." Mrs. Chin nodded, but Serafina caught the worried look in her eyes. Smart woman. She knew something was wrong. Luna pressed close to her mother's side. "They took pictures of my drawings." "Who did, sweetheart?" "The men in suits. They couldn't find what they were looking for, so they took pictures of everything." Serafina's hands shook as she tucked Luna into Mrs. Chin's spare bed. Her daughter's abilities had been growing stronger lately, the episodes more frequent. If the wrong people discovered what Luna could do, what she could access through her ancestral memories. Her phone buzzed. "Arjun Malhotra, your apartment was searched tonight. Are you and Luna safe?" She stepped into the hallway to respond. "How did you know? I have people watching the building. Say yes to my proposal, and I can protect you both." This is manipulation. This is reality. Your brother Damien hired the team that broke in tonight. He's getting closer. Serafina's knees nearly buckled. Damien was alive. After 11 years of believing her family thought her dead, He'd found her. I need guarantees. Name them. Luna's safety comes first. Always. And I want to know everything about this curse you're trying to break. Agreed. Can you be ready in an hour? Ready for what? We're leaving for Vegas. If we're doing this, we're doing it tonight before your family can interfere. The line went dead. Serafina stared at her phone, mind reeling. Marry a man she'd met twice to protect her daughter from a family that wanted them both dead. It sounded insane when she put it like that. But Luna's safety wasn't negotiable. She gathered their few belongings and woke Mrs. Chun to explain they'd be traveling for Luna's medical treatment. The older woman didn't ask questions, just pressed a jade bracelet into Luna's hands for protection. Arjun's car arrived exactly 1 hour later. This time he was in the passenger seat, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. He looked like he was going to a funeral instead of his own wedding. Second thoughts? She asked as they pulled away from the building. Third and fourth thoughts. But the alternative is worse. Luna curled up between them in the back seat, her sketch pad open on her lap. She was drawing again, her pencil moving in quick, sure strokes. When she finished, she showed them the picture. 2 figures standing in front of an altar, surrounded by shadows with watching eyes. But above them, a golden light was breaking through dark clouds. It's going to be okay, Luna said quietly. The lady with sad eyes told me. Sometimes you have to walk through the darkness to find the light. Arjun studied the drawing, his expression unreadable. What else does the lady tell you? That her family and your family made a promise a long time ago. But someone broke the promise, and now people keep dying. Do you know how to fix it? Luna nodded solemnly. The papers are hidden where the water meets the stone. But first, the hearts have to choose love over fear. Serafina felt Arjun's eyes on her, but she kept her gaze fixed out the window. Hearts choosing love over fear. If only it were that simple. The private jet was waiting at Teterboro Airport. Serafina had flown private before, back when she was still Serafina Blackwood, but Luna pressed her face to the window in wonder as they climbed above the city lights. I've never been on a plane before, Luna whispered. Really? Arjun seemed genuinely surprised. We don't travel much, Serafina said carefully. That's going to change. There are a lot of places I'd like to show both of you. Something in his voice made her look at him. For a moment, the careful mask slipped, and she saw something that looked almost like longing. Don't get attached, she warned. This is a business arrangement. Of course. But his hand moved to cover hers on the armrest, and she didn't pull away. They landed in Vegas at 3 in the morning. The chapel Arjun had chosen was small and surprisingly tasteful, nothing like the Elvis-themed spectacle she'd expected. The officiant was a kind-faced woman who didn't ask questions about the unusual timing or the 10-year-old witness. Do you, Arjun Malhotra, take Serafina Hayes to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was steady, but Serafina could see the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't how either of them had imagined getting married. Do you, Serafina Hayes, take Arjun Malhotra to be your lawfully wedded husband? She looked at Luna, who nodded encouragingly, then back at Arjun. His dark eyes held hers, and for a moment she saw past the billionaire facade to the man underneath. Someone who was just as scared and desperate as she was. I do. The rings were simple platinum bands that fit perfectly. Arjun must have had them sized based on photos from the auction. The kiss was brief, formal, more like sealing a contract than celebrating a union. You may now kiss the bride. But when his lips touched hers, something unexpected happened. A spark of genuine attraction that had nothing to do with protection or convenience. Just for a moment, she forgot why they were really there. They flew back to New York as the sun rose, landing at a private airstrip in the Hamptons. The house looked different in daylight, less imposing and more like a home. There's something you need to see, Arjun said as they walked inside. He led them to his study, where old family documents were spread across a massive oak desk. Genealogy charts, property deeds, and newspaper clippings dating back over a century. This is everything I've found about the original conflict between our families. And this. He pulled out a faded photograph. Is your great-great-grandmother, Isabella Blackwood, and my great-uncle Vikram Malhotra. The photo showed a young couple in formal Victorian dress, standing in front of an ornate church. They were holding hands and smiling at the camera with obvious love and joy. They were married, Serafina breathed, for exactly 6 months before they both died in what the papers called a hunting accident. But I found the coroner's report. They were murdered. Luna moved closer to study the photograph, her face scrunching in concentration. The lady with sad eyes. That's her. Isabella. She reached out to touch the picture, and suddenly her eyes rolled back in her head. Her body went rigid as words poured out of her mouth in a voice that wasn't quite her own. The treaty lies beneath the foundation stone where two waters meet. Only united blood can reclaim what was stolen. Beware the one who calls himself brother, for he seeks to finish what hatred began. Luna collapsed into Serafina's arms, unconscious but breathing steadily. Arjun stared at them both, his face pale. That's never happened before. Not like that. Serafina's voice was barely a whisper. She's getting stronger. Or the ancestors are getting more desperate to communicate. They looked at each other across Luna's sleeping form, and Serafina realized that whatever they'd gotten themselves into was far more dangerous than either of them had imagined. Outside, a car engine rumbled up the driveway. Arjun moved to the window and cursed under his breath. We have company. The black sedan that pulled up to the estate belonged to Damien Blackwood. Serafina recognized the license plate from memory, even after 11 years. Her brother had always been predictable in some ways, sentimental in others. Take Luna upstairs, Arjun ordered, his voice tight with tension. Lock the door and don't come out until I give the all clear. He's my brother. I should handle this. Your brother tried to kill you once. I'm not giving him another chance. Serafina wanted to argue, but Luna was still unconscious in her arms. She carried her daughter up the grand staircase to the master suite, settling her on the bed before moving to the window that overlooked the front drive. Damien stepped out of the car alone, but she could see at least two other figures in the vehicle. He looked exactly the same as he had 11 years ago. Tall, sharp-featured, with the Blackwood blue eyes that had once been called beautiful and were now simply cold. He was carrying a briefcase. Arjun met him at the front door, and even from this distance, Serafina could see the tension in both men's postures. This wasn't a social call. Her phone buzzed with a text from Arjun. Stay upstairs no matter what you hear. She watched through the window as both men disappeared into the house. Minutes passed. Then she heard raised voices from the study below, followed by something that sounded like furniture being overturned. Luna stirred on the bed behind her. Mom, I'm here, sweetheart. How do you feel? Dizzy. But the lady with sad eyes is still talking to me. Luna sat up slowly, blinking in confusion. She says Uncle Damien brought poison. What kind of poison? Not the kind you drink. The kind that lives in papers and makes people sign their lives away. Serafina's blood ran cold. Damien had always been the family lawyer, the one who handled contracts and negotiations. If he was here with a briefcase full of legal documents. The shouting downstairs grew louder. She caught fragments through the thick walls. Rightful heir. And family assets. And custody of the child. Luna slipped off the bed and moved to stand beside her mother at the window. He wants to take me away. That's not going to happen. But the papers he brought say I belong to the Blackwood family. That my real father left me everything when he died. Serafina spun around to stare at her daughter. How could you possibly know that? Isabella told me. She says Uncle Damien found out about Daddy Vikram's will, the one that left all his money to his daughter. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. If Damien had discovered that Luna was Vikram Malhotra's daughter, he could claim custody as her closest living relative. The Blackwood family fortune was gone, depleted by years of legal battles and bad investments. But the Malhotra money. A gunshot rang out from downstairs. Serafina grabbed Luna and pulled her away from the window, both of them dropping to the floor behind the bed. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she strained to hear any sound from below. Silence. Then footsteps on the stairs. Slow, measured, climbing toward them. Serafina looked around the room for anything she could use as a weapon. The bedside lamp was heavy enough to do damage, but if Damien was armed. A soft knock on the door. Serafina? It's me. Arjun's voice. She sagged with relief, then caught herself. Prove it. Luna draws family crests in her sleep. You take your coffee black with 2 sugars. And you're wearing the same perfume you wore to the auction. She unlocked the door to find Arjun standing in the hallway, his shirt torn and a cut above his left eyebrow bleeding freely. But he was alive. Where's Damien? Gone. For now. He stepped into the room and locked the door behind him. He came with an offer. Marriage annulment, full custody of Luna to the Blackwood family, and a $10 million settlement for your trouble. What did you tell him? I told him to go to hell. Luna tugged on Arjun's sleeve. Did you shoot him? No, sweetheart. I shot the wall behind him. Very loudly. He decided he had somewhere else to be. Despite everything, Serafina almost smiled. That's why you married me so quickly. You knew he'd try something like this. I suspected. Your brother isn't exactly subtle. Arjun sat heavily in the armchair by the window, pressing a tissue to his bleeding forehead. But this is just the opening move. He'll be back with lawyers, maybe a court order. Not if we disappear again. Running didn't work the first time. It won't work now. Luna climbed onto the bed and opened her sketch pad, her pencil moving across a fresh page. When she finished, she showed them the drawing. A large house surrounded by water on 3 sides, ancient trees, and beneath it all, a network of tunnels and hidden chambers. The lady says the papers are hidden here, in the place where her daddy built secret rooms for treasure. Arjun leaned forward, studying the drawing. That's the original Blackwood estate on the North Shore. I thought it was demolished decades ago. It's still there, Serafina said quietly. Abandoned, but standing. My grandfather couldn't bear to tear it down after Isabella died. Then that's where we need to go. It's not safe. The property has been in legal limbo for years. Damien's probably already watching it, which is why we're going tonight. Serafina wanted to argue, but Luna spoke up first. We have to go, Mom. Isabella says time is running out. The shadows are getting stronger. As if summoned by her words, Serafina's phone rang. Unknown number again. Don't answer it, Arjun said, but she was already lifting the phone to her ear. Hello, sister. Damien's voice was silk over steel. Congratulations on your marriage. Very romantic. Vegas at 3 in the morning. What do you want, Damien? I want what's mine. And what's mine includes that little girl sleeping in your arms. Luna is my daughter. Luna is Vikram Malhotra's daughter, which makes her the heir to everything he owned when he died. Did you really think you could hide her forever? Serafina's grip tightened on the phone. She's just a child. She's a child worth $50 million, not counting the interest that's been accumulating for the past 10 years. The line went dead. Serafina stared at the phone, her mind reeling. $50 million. No wonder Damien had found them. We leave in an hour, Arjun said grimly. Pack light. They took the boat. Arjun kept a 30-foot yacht at the private marina, fast enough to outrun most pursuit and quiet enough to approach the abandoned Blackwood estate without attracting attention. Luna fell asleep on the cabin's small bed during the hour-long journey across Long Island Sound. Serafina sat beside her daughter, watching her face for signs of another episode. The ancestral communications were getting stronger, more frequent. She didn't know what that meant, but it couldn't be good. Tell me about Vikram, she said to Arjun as he navigated through the darkness. My cousin, 3 years older than me, heir to the family fortune until he died at 19. Arjun's hands were steady on the wheel, but she could hear the old pain in his voice. He was supposed to marry some senator's daughter, cement a political alliance. Instead, he fell in love with a Blackwood. With me. With you. The families tried to keep you apart, but Vikram was stubborn. He said love was stronger than hate, that your marriage would end the feud forever. What happened? Someone didn't want the feud to end. The Blackwood estate loomed out of the darkness like something from a Gothic novel. 3 stories of weathered stone and broken windows, surrounded by overgrown gardens and twisted trees. It had been beautiful once. Now it looked haunted. They anchored the boat in a small cove and waded ashore through knee-deep water. Luna woke as they reached the beach, instantly alert. The lady says to be careful. Someone else is here. Arjun pulled out his phone and activated a flashlight app. The weak beam barely penetrated the shadows surrounding the house, but it was better than nothing. They approached the main entrance carefully. The front door hung open on rusted hinges, revealing a grand foyer thick with dust and debris. Family portraits still hung on the walls, their eyes seeming to follow the intruders through the darkness. Luna stopped in front of one particular painting. A young woman with blonde hair and intelligent green eyes, wearing a blue dress that matched her eye color perfectly. Isabella, Luna whispered. The painted woman seemed to smile. Where are the secret rooms? Arjun asked. Luna closed her eyes, listening to something only she could hear. Then she pointed toward a corridor leading deeper into the house. This way, but we have to hurry. The bad men are coming. As if summoned by her words, car engines rumbled in the distance, growing closer. They ran. Luna led them through a maze of corridors that seemed to shift and change in the darkness. The beam from Arjun's phone caught glimpses of rotting wallpaper and broken furniture, but somehow the 10-year-old navigated the ruins with complete confidence. "Here," she whispered, stopping in front of what appeared to be a solid wall in the mansion's library. Her small hand pressed against a section of carved molding, and a hidden panel swung inward with a grinding sound. The secret passage beyond was narrow and musty, clearly unused for decades. Arjun went first, phone light cutting through the darkness, followed by Luna and then Serafina. Behind them, car doors slammed in the estate's circular drive. "They're inside the house," Serafina breathed as footsteps echoed through the rooms above. The passage opened into a hidden study that had been preserved like a time capsule. Heavy furniture sat beneath dust covers, and the walls were lined with legal documents in protective frames. At the center of the room stood an ornate desk with a single drawer that had been left conspicuously open. Luna ran straight to it. The treaty was here, but someone already took it. Damien, Serafina realized. He's been searching this place for years. Arjun examined the empty drawer, then the documents on the walls. These are property deeds, business contracts. But there's something missing. The marriage certificate, Luna said matter-of-factly. Isabella and Vikram got married in secret. But someone hid the proof so the families would keep fighting. Voices drifted down from the main house. Multiple men, speaking in hushed tones as they searched room by room. Serafina recognized Damien's voice among them, giving orders. "There has to be another way out," Arjun muttered, examining the walls for additional hidden panels. "There is." Luna moved to what looked like a decorative fireplace. "But first, Mom has to tell the truth." Serafina felt both sets of eyes turn toward her. "What truth? About who my real daddy is?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Serafina had spent 11 years crafting the perfect lie, protecting Luna from a truth that could destroy them both. Now, trapped in the bowels of her family's ancestral home, with killers searching overhead, the deception felt impossibly heavy. "Your father was a good man who died before you were born. That's not the whole truth." Luna's voice carried an authority that didn't belong to a child. "Isabella showed me. She was there when I was born." Arjun stepped closer. "Serafina, if Luna is really Vikram's daughter, then she's not just my cousin's child. She's my heir." "What are you talking about?" "Vikram never had a chance to change his will before he died. Everything he owned reverted to the family trust, which means it passes to the next male heir in his direct line. But if he had a daughter, she inherits everything," Serafina finished, understanding flooding through her. $50 million. Try $500 million. Plus the accumulated interest and investment returns over the past 11 years. The number was staggering. Luna wasn't just wealthy, she was one of the richest children in America. No wonder Damien had been so determined to find them. "Mom." Luna's voice was small again, vulnerable. "Are you my real mom?" The question hit Serafina like a physical blow. "Of course I'm your real mom. I carried you for 9 months. I gave birth to you. I've loved you every day of your life." But the lady with sad eyes, she looks just like me. And she says I have her husband's eyes. Serafina knelt beside her daughter, taking Luna's face in her hands. "You want the truth? The whole truth?" Luna nodded solemnly. "Your biological father was Vikram Malhotra. We fell in love when we were teenagers, and we got married in secret. Both our families were furious. They said we were betraying centuries of tradition, destroying the natural order. What happened to him? He was murdered 3 days after you were born, shot in the back while walking through Central Park. The police called it a random mugging, but I knew better." Arjun's face had gone pale. "Murdered by who?" "I don't know. Could have been my family, could have been yours. Everyone had a reason to want us dead." Serafina's voice was steady, but tears tracked down her cheeks. "So I faked my own death and disappeared. I couldn't let them take you away from me. But they found us anyway," Luna said softly. "Yes, they found us anyway." The footsteps above were getting closer. Damien's voice echoed through the house. "Search every room. They're here somewhere." Luna pressed her hand against the fireplace's back wall, and another panel swung open. This passage was even narrower than the first, leading down into what must have been the mansion's original foundation. They crawled through the tunnel for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The air grew colder and damper as they descended, until finally they emerged into a natural cave that opened onto the Sound's rocky shoreline. "The boat," Arjun said, pointing toward the cove where they'd anchored. But as they approached the water's edge, figures emerged from the shadows. 4 men in dark suits, all armed, blocking their escape route. "Hello, sister," Damien called from behind them. They spun around to find him standing at the cave entrance with 2 more armed men. In the moonlight, his smile looked predatory. "Quite an adventure, wasn't it? But I'm afraid the game is over." "Uncle Damien," Luna said, stepping forward with surprising calm. "Why do you want to hurt us?" "I don't want to hurt you, sweetheart. I want to protect you." "From her." He pointed at Serafina. "From the woman who stole you from your real family. She is my real family. Your real family has money, power, a legacy that goes back centuries. What does she have? A 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn and a pile of medical bills." Luna looked back at her mother, then at Arjun, then at the armed men surrounding them. When she spoke, her voice carried that otherworldly authority again. "Isabella says you're lying. You don't want to protect me. You want my daddy's money." Damien's smile faltered. "You're just a child. You don't understand how complicated this is. I understand that you killed my daddy." The words hit the cave like a thunderclap. Even the armed men shifted uncomfortably. "That's impossible," Damien said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "You were a baby when Vikram died, but Isabella was there. She saw everything." Luna's eyes had gone white, rolled back in her head. When she spoke again, it was in a voice that belonged to a woman who had died over a century ago. "You hired the man who shot my Vikram in the park. You wanted the inheritance for yourself, wanted to use it to rebuild the Blackwood fortune. But you never counted on the child surviving, never counted on her carrying our memories." Damien took a step backward. "This is impossible. You're just a little girl with an overactive imagination. Tell him about the birthmark." Isabella's voice commanded through Luna's mouth. "Tell him about the scar on his shoulder from when he fell out of the apple tree when he was 7. Serafina stared at her daughter in shock. There was no way Luna could know about Damien's childhood scar. She'd been gone from the family for 11 years, and Damien had been careful to never let anyone see it. But when Damien instinctively moved his hand to cover his left shoulder, she knew Luna was right. "How?" Damien whispered. "The dead remember everything," Luna said in her own voice, her eyes clearing. "And they're very angry with you, Uncle Damien." One of the armed men crossed himself. Another took a step backward toward the cave entrance. Arjun used the distraction to grab a loose rock from the cave floor. "Serafina, when I say run, you take Luna and get to the boat. I'm not leaving you. You're not losing another father figure," he said quietly. "Not on my watch." Before she could argue, he hurled the rock at the nearest gunman and dove toward Damien. Chaos erupted in the cave as men shouted and scrambled for position. "Run!" Arjun yelled. Serafina grabbed Luna's hand and sprinted toward the water, bullets whining off the rocks behind them. They hit the water at full speed, the cold Atlantic shocking them both into gasping awareness. Behind them, the sound of fighting echoed from the cave. A gunshot, then silence. "Arjun," Serafina breathed, treading water beside the boat. Luna pulled herself up the ladder with surprising strength. "He's okay, Mom. Isabella told me. But we have to hurry." Serafina hauled herself onto the deck and started the engine with shaking hands. As they pulled away from shore, a figure appeared at the cave entrance. Tall, dark-haired, limping but definitely alive. "Arjun." They circled back to pick him up, Damien and his men nowhere to be seen. Blood seeped through a tear in Arjun's shirt, but he was conscious and moving under his own power. "What happened to them?" Serafina asked as she helped him into the boat. Damien's men decided they weren't being paid enough to fight ghosts. They left him behind. "And Damien?" Arjun's expression was grim. "Let's just say he won't be bothering anyone for a while." As they headed back toward the Hamptons, Luna curled up between them, her sketch pad open on her lap. She was drawing again, but this time the picture showed 3 figures standing together against a sunrise. For the first time in 11 years, Serafina allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they were going to survive this. The attack came at dawn. Serafina woke to the sound of shattering glass and Luna's terrified scream. Armed men poured through the windows of Arjun's estate like black-clad phantoms, moving with military precision through rooms they'd clearly studied in advance. "Get down," Arjun shouted, rolling off the bed and reaching for the gun he kept in the nightstand. But more men were already in the bedroom, weapons trained on all three of them. "Nobody move." The voice belonged to a woman Serafina recognized from old family photographs. Victoria Blackwood, Damien's wife, though they'd been separated for years. She stepped through the broken window with the casual confidence of someone who owned the world. "Hello, Serafina. You look well for a dead woman." "Victoria." Serafina kept her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. "I thought you'd moved to Switzerland." "I did, until my dear husband called last night, babbling about ghosts and ancestral curses. It seems your little girl gave him quite a fright." Luna pressed against her mother's side, clutching her sketchpad. "Where's Uncle Damien?" "Recovering in a private hospital. 3 broken ribs and a severe concussion, according to the doctors. He claims a dead woman pushed him off a cliff." Arjun slowly raised his hands, the gun still visible in his grip. "What do you want, Victoria?" "What I've always wanted. Control of the Blackwood assets. Unfortunately, that now includes the small fortune your cousin left to his bastard daughter." "Luna isn't a bastard," Serafina snapped. "Vikram and I were legally married. A piece of paper hidden in a cave doesn't constitute a legal marriage. My lawyers have already filed injunctions challenging any claim the child might have to Malhotra money. You can't just take her. Watch me." Victoria nodded to her men, who moved forward to grab Luna. But the 10-year-old stepped away from her mother's protective embrace, her eyes taking on that familiar otherworldly gleam. "You're making a mistake, Aunt Victoria." "Am I?" "Enlighten me, child. The money isn't really why you're here. You're here because you're afraid." Victoria's confident mask slipped slightly. "Afraid of what?" "Afraid that people will find out what you did to Isabella and Vikram, how you hired the man who killed them." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Even the armed men shifted uncomfortably. "That's impossible. Isabella died over a century ago. But she remembers. She remembers the woman who came to her house the night before she died. The woman who offered her money to leave Vikram and disappear forever." Victoria's face had gone white. "You're talking nonsense. When Isabella refused, you hired men to stage the hunting accident. But you made a mistake. You forgot that Isabella was pregnant." Serafina stared at her daughter in shock. This wasn't part of the family history she knew. "Isabella had a baby," she whispered. Luna nodded, still speaking in that eerie, authoritative voice. "A daughter who survived the fire, who grew up and had children of her own. Children who carried Isabella's memories, generation after generation." "That's genetically impossible," Victoria sputtered. "Is it?" Luna's small hand moved to her sketchpad, and she began drawing without looking at the paper. "Isabella says blood remembers everything, especially blood that's been spilled unjustly." The drawing showed a family tree with branches stretching back over a century. At the top were Isabella and Vikram, their names connected by a heart. Below them, a line of descendants, each marked with dates of birth and death. And at the bottom, circled in red, Luna Hayes Malhotra Blackwood. "The original treaty," Luna said, still drawing. "The document that was supposed to unite our families forever. You stole it after Isabella died. Hid it so the feud would continue. Because war was profitable, and peace meant sharing power." Victoria lunged forward to grab the sketchpad, but Luna pulled it away. The drawing was complete now, showing not just the family tree, but a detailed map of the Blackwood estate's hidden tunnels and secret rooms. "It's still there," Luna said softly. "Hidden where water meets stone, just like Isabella told me. The real treaty, signed by both families, promising that any children born of their union would inherit everything." "Even if that were true," Victoria said through gritted teeth, "you're just one little girl. What can you possibly do against all of this?" Luna looked around the room at the armed men, then at Victoria, then at her parents. When she smiled, it was with ancient wisdom that didn't belong on a 10-year-old's face. "I can tell the truth." She pressed her hand against the broken window, and suddenly the room filled with voices. Whispers at first, then louder, as if a crowd of people were speaking all at once. The armed men backed toward the walls, eyes wide with terror. "Isabella Blackwood, murdered 1889. Luna recited as the voices swirled around them. "Thomas Malhotra, poisoned 1892. Elizabeth Blackwood, pushed downstairs 1895. The list goes on and on. Aunt Victoria. All the people who died because you wanted to keep the families fighting. Stop this, Victoria screamed, but her voice was barely audible over the ghostly chorus. Marcus Blackwood, shot in his study 1901. James Malhotra, drowned in the Sound 1903. Catherine Blackwood, strangled in her sleep 1907. The voices grew louder with each name, until the windows began to rattle in their frames. Picture frames fell from the walls. The armed men dropped their weapons and ran. Make it stop, Victoria pleaded, falling to her knees. Confess, Luna commanded, and now her voice contained multitudes. Confess what your family has done. We killed them, Victoria sobbed. All of them. Generation after generation, we killed anyone who tried to make peace. Because peace meant losing control, losing money, losing power. And Vikram? My father. I hired the gunman. Damien was supposed to do it, but he was too weak. So I did it myself. The voices suddenly stopped. The room fell into complete silence except for Victoria's ragged breathing. Luna's eyes cleared, and she was just a little girl again. Thank you for telling the truth, Aunt Victoria. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Arjun moved to the window and looked out at the estate's driveway. Police. Someone must have called about the gunshots. Victoria looked up from the floor, her face streaked with tears. You think this is over? You think one confession changes anything? I think, Serafina said quietly, that the dead can finally rest. As the police cars surrounded the house, Luna climbed onto the bed and curled up between her parents. For the first time since this all began, she looked like what she was, a tired 10-year-old who had seen too much. Is it really over, Mom? Serafina looked at Arjun, who nodded slowly. I think it might be, sweetheart. I think it finally might be. Outside, Victoria Blackwood was being led away in handcuffs, still babbling about ghosts and family curses. The war between the families had lasted over a century, but it was finally ending. The gunshot came from behind the police cars. Serafina watched in horror from the estate's front steps as Damien Blackwood emerged from the woods, a rifle trained on the officers surrounding Victoria. His face was a mask of dried blood and fury, his left arm hanging useless at his side. Let her go, he shouted, his voice carrying across the circular drive. This ends now. The police officers dove for cover behind their vehicles, shouting orders into their radios. Victoria stood frozen in the middle of it all, handcuffs glinting in the morning sun. Damien, don't, she called out. It's over. I confessed everything. Nothing's over until that brat is dead. Arjun stepped protectively in front of Serafina and Luna, but Damien's rifle wasn't aimed at them. Not yet. You destroyed everything, Damien screamed at his wife. A century of careful planning, generations of work, and you threw it all away because of some ghost story. The ghosts were real, Damien. I felt them. They spoke through the child. The child is a freak, just like her mother. Just like that whole cursed bloodline. He swung the rifle toward the house, and Serafina's world narrowed to a single moment of terrible clarity. Damien was going to kill Luna, and there wasn't enough cover to protect her. Get down, Arjun yelled, throwing himself sideways as the first shot shattered the stone steps where they'd been standing. But instead of diving for safety, Serafina found herself running toward her brother. 11 years of fear and hiding crystallized into pure rage. She tackled Damien around the waist just as he fired again, sending the shot wild. They hit the ground hard, rolling down the estate's sloped lawn in a tangle of limbs. Damien was bigger and stronger, but his injured arm gave Serafina an advantage. She managed to knee him in the ribs before he threw her off. You should have stayed dead, he snarled, struggling to his feet. You should have left my daughter alone. They circled each other on the grass, both breathing hard. Police officers were moving in from all sides, but Damien still had the rifle clutched in his good hand. She's not your daughter, he spat. She's a Malhotra bastard with Blackwood blood, an abomination that should never have been born. She's perfect exactly as she is. She's worth $500 million. Do you have any idea what I could have done with that money? What I could have rebuilt? Built on blood and murder. Just like our family always has. Our family built empires. We were kings before the Malhotras even existed. Serafina laughed, but there was no humor in it. We were killers, Damien. That's all we ever were. He raised the rifle, but his injured arm made him slow. Serafina dove to the side as the shot rang out, then kept rolling until she could grab a fallen tree branch. When Damien tried to work the bolt for another round, she swung the makeshift club as hard as she could. The branch connected with his skull with a sickening crack. Damien dropped the rifle and staggered backward, blood streaming down his face. "You destroyed everything," he whispered, then collapsed. The police were on him in seconds, securing the weapon and checking for a pulse. Serafina stood over her brother's unconscious form, shaking with adrenaline and 11 years of suppressed fury. "Is he dead?" she asked the nearest officer. "Unconscious. Severe head trauma. We need an ambulance." As paramedics rushed to treat Damien, Serafina looked back toward the house. Arjun was sitting on the front steps, Luna cradled in his arms. Both of them were staring at her with expressions of shock and something that might have been pride. She walked back to them on unsteady legs, her whole body starting to crash from the adrenaline high. "Is it really over this time?" Luna asked softly. "I think so, sweetheart." "Good. Because Isabella says she's tired of being angry. She wants to sleep now." Luna's eyes fluttered closed, and for a moment Serafina panicked. But her daughter was just exhausted, breathing deeply and peacefully for the first time in days. "She's been carrying the weight of all those ancestral memories," Arjun said quietly. "No child should have to bear that burden. Maybe now she won't have to." They sat together on the steps, watching as ambulances and police cars filled the estate's driveway. Damien was loaded onto a stretcher, still unconscious, while Victoria was transferred to a different vehicle to be taken to jail. "What happens now?" Serafina asked. "Now we figure out how to be a real family instead of just a marriage of convenience." She looked at him, this man who had risked everything to protect them. Somewhere along the way, between the danger and the revelations and the ancient curses, she had fallen in love with him. Not because he could protect her, not because he was wealthy or powerful, but because he had looked at her broken, complicated family and chosen to fight for them anyway. "Arjun, I need to tell you something." "What?" "This isn't just gratitude or trauma bonding. What I feel for you, it's real." He was quiet for a long moment, his arm tightening around Luna's sleeping form. "Even knowing that I bid $300,000 to basically buy you? Especially knowing that. Because you could have just taken what you wanted. Instead, you asked. You gave me a choice. And now I'm choosing you. Not because I have to, not because Luna needs a father figure, but because I love you." He turned to look at her, and she saw her own feelings reflected in his dark eyes. "I love you too. Both of you. More than I thought possible." They kissed over Luna's sleeping head, gentle and tender and full of promise. Around them, the chaos of police and paramedics continued, but for this moment, they were just a family sitting together in the morning sun. "Mom." Luna stirred between them, blinking sleepily. "I'm here, baby. Are you and Arjun going to have a real wedding now? With flowers and cake and everything?" Serafina laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in years. "Would you like that?" "Yes. And I want to wear a pretty dress and carry flowers and walk down the aisle with you." "Then that's exactly what we'll do." As they sat there planning a future that finally felt possible, none of them noticed the figure watching from the edge of the woods. Victoria's brother Marcus had been waiting for his chance, and with Damien out of commission, he was now the head of what remained of the Blackwood family. The war wasn't over yet. But for now, in this moment, love had won. 6 months later, the real wedding took place in the gardens of the restored Blackwood estate. Serafina had insisted on holding the ceremony there, where it all began. The house had been gutted and rebuilt from the foundation up, the secret passages filled in, the hidden rooms converted into bright, open spaces. What had once been a monument to family hatred was now a home for healing. Luna walked down the aisle first, scattering rose petals from a basket woven with ribbons in both family colors. Her white dress sparkled with tiny crystals, and she wore Isabella's pearl necklace, a gift from beyond that had appeared mysteriously on her pillow one morning. Serafina followed, wearing her grandmother's wedding dress that had been preserved in an old trunk. The ivory silk had yellowed slightly with age, but it still fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Arjun stood at the altar beneath an arch of white roses and baby's breath, his dark suit perfectly tailored, his smile brighter than she had ever seen it. Beside him stood his cousin Priya as best woman, and behind them sat nearly 100 guests from both families and their new shared life. The officiant was the same kind-faced woman from their Vegas ceremony, flown in specially for the occasion. But this time, when she asked them to repeat their vows, the words came from the heart. "I promise to love you not just in the light, but in the darkness," Arjun said, his voice carrying across the silent garden. "To choose hope over fear, forgiveness over revenge, and to build something beautiful from the ashes of our family's pain." "I promise to trust you with my whole heart," Serafina replied, tears streaming down her face. "To let you love not just me, but the daughter who is now our daughter. To believe that love really can conquer everything, even a century of hate." When they kissed, the entire garden erupted in applause. But Luna, standing beside them in her flower girl dress, was looking at something the adults couldn't see. "Isabella says congratulations," she whispered. "And Vikram says he's proud of his little girl." That evening, the reception spilled across the estate's manicured lawns. A string quartet played classical music while guests danced under twinkling lights strung between ancient oak trees. The wedding cake was 5 tiers of vanilla and raspberry, decorated with sugar flowers that matched the bridal bouquet. But the real celebration wasn't in the formal dinner or the carefully choreographed dances. It was in the small moments. Luna teaching her new stepfather how to waltz, her laughter ringing across the gardens. Serafina dancing with guests who had become family, no longer afraid of being seen or found. "Mrs. Malhotra," Arjun whispered in her ear as they swayed together to the music. "I like the sound of that." "Good, because you're stuck with it for the next 60 years or so." "Only 60? I was hoping for longer." They were interrupted by Cameron, Arjun's assistant, who approached with an apologetic expression and a manila envelope. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but this just arrived by courier. It's marked urgent." Arjun took the envelope with a frown, but Serafina could already guess what it contained. The legal battles weren't over yet. Victoria was in prison awaiting trial. Damien was in a psychiatric facility, but there were other relatives, other claims on Luna's inheritance. "Open it," she said quietly. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." But when Arjun read the letter inside, his expression shifted from worry to amazement. "It's not a legal challenge. It's from Marcus Blackwood." Serafina tensed. Victoria's brother had been conspicuously absent from their lives since the events at the estate, but that didn't mean he'd given up. What does he want? To surrender. He's transferring all remaining Blackwood assets to Luna's trust fund and formally apologizing for his family's actions over the past century. The letter was brief but comprehensive. Marcus had apparently spent months researching his family's true history, uncovering documents that proved Victoria and Damien's guilt in dozens of murders spanning generations. Faced with the evidence, and perhaps influenced by his own encounters with restless spirits, he was choosing to end the feud permanently. "There's more," Arjun continued reading. "He's donating the family's historical records to establish a foundation for families affected by generational trauma. And he wants Luna to be the honorary chairperson when she comes of age." Luna appeared at their sides, somehow managing to look both elegant and childlike in her formal dress with frosting on her fingers. "What's everyone talking about?" "Uncle Marcus wants to make peace," Serafina explained. "Good. Isabella says it's time for everyone to forgive each other." "What else does Isabella say?" Arjun asked, crouching down to Luna's level. "That she's ready to go to sleep now. The angry voices are quiet, and the families are friends again. She says to tell you thank you for keeping your promise." "What promise?" "To love each other no matter what." As if summoned by her words, a gentle breeze moved through the garden, carrying the scent of roses and something else, something sweeter. For just a moment, the guests fell silent, as if they could sense invisible presences moving among them, offering blessings and finally finding peace. Then the music resumed, the dancing continued, and the celebration carried on into the night. Later, after the last guest had gone home and Luna had fallen asleep in her new bedroom, Serafina and Arjun sat together on the estate's terrace, looking out over the sound. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked. "The curse? The feud? Or the danger?" "All of it." Arjun considered the question seriously. "I think some stories take generations to end properly, but I also think we've broken the cycle. Luna won't grow up afraid, won't spend her life running or fighting. She'll be free to choose her own path. And us, we get to discover what it means to be happy. Really, genuinely happy. without looking over our shoulders or waiting for the other shoe to drop. Serafina leaned against his shoulder, marveling at how safe she felt. For 11 years, safety had been an illusion, something that could be shattered at any moment. Now it felt solid, permanent, built on a foundation of choice rather than circumstance. "I have something to tell you," she said. "Another family secret? A new family addition." It took him a moment to understand. When he did, his eyes widened with wonder and joy. "You're pregnant?" 2 months. I wanted to wait until after the wedding to be sure. Luna's going to be a big sister. She already knows. She drew a picture of a baby last week and told me the lady with sad eyes said there would be 4 of us soon. Arjun pulled her closer, his hand moving to rest protectively over her still flat stomach. "Boy or girl? Does it matter?" "Not even a little bit." They sat together in comfortable silence, planning a future that finally felt limitless. Around them, the estate settled into peaceful quiet, its ghosts finally at rest. The war between the families was over. Love had won, and in the gardens where hatred had once bloomed, a new generation would grow up knowing only joy.